Okay,
Good.
so we'll go live in five, four, three, two, one.
Sure.
Good evening. I'm delighted to be joined by my friend Mihai Tudor from Bucharest, Romania. Mihai, great to see you.
Hi, good evening. Nice to see you too, Chandra. It's been a while.
It has been a while, hasn't it? I know. I think we met back in Bucharest in 2017, wasn't it?
It was 2013 actually. We met the first time we actually
Oh yeah,
met.
that was the
We
first
met in
time.
Reading.
Yeah,
That's right. That's right. I remember I was coming back from a business trip, and I think so were you. So yeah,
I think
yeah.
so. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
2016 or 17, wasn't it? Right? I think first time
It was
that
twice.
that
The
you came
first was
here.
no. The first time was 2014. I remember that quite clearly because I just returned from a trip in Istanbul, and then I was shortly after that. I think it was towards the end of February, early March. I think we met in Bucharest. It was very nice of you to take me around, the city over the weekend.
I remember we went at Hanu Manuk and we had some Romanian food. I ordered polenta, I think, for you. So
Polenta
yeah, I
for me.
remember
Oh
that
yeah.
one. And then second time you came, we went to the Indian restaurant, if I'm not mistaken. We went to Haveli
No, we
second
we
time
we, we
around.
went to the no, we went to the Indian restaurant on both occasions. I think when I came in 2014, it was you, me, and Florin.
Did we?
And and in
Uh-huh.
2017, it was just you and me. I think Florin wasn't around then, or maybe he was in the US. I don't quite remember. Um,
I think he was away. He was on a business trip somewhere. Yeah, I remember
yeah,
that. Yeah,
yeah,
true, true,
yeah.
true. You might be right.
I particularly enjoyed the tour of the Palace of the Parliament. How do you say that in Romanian?
Palatul Parlamentului. So it's similar to Palace of the Parliament. The words are similar. We also call it Casa Poporului,
Okay,
which basically means the house of the people.
House of the People. But I guess it's quite ironic, isn't it, given what Ceausescu had done during his tenure?
Yeah, it wasn't for the people at all. But I think, such a large investment, he needed to somehow find the reason for it. So that's why he said, no, it's for you guys, it's not for me. Although in reality, it was for him and for his self-esteem, I would say.
Yeah, political gamesmanship as we've known it ever since time immemorial. So,
Yeah.
so I really want to start this off. I know it's been a difficult time for all of us around the world. I know when we met back in 2013, I think the common thread of interest was both of us had a passion for travel, which is why we were able to click almost immediately on that bus journey from Reading to Heathrow. I know it's been hard, COVID, for virtually every single person in this world, but especially for travelers like us, just to be boxed inside your room, for it must be so hard, especially for you. I think, given what you've been through over the last few months.
Yeah, that's right. I would say one of the first people in Romania to be impacted by COVID, not directly, although to be honest, it was still a very tough situation. So my parents both got COVID. They were, I think,
Mm-hmm.
one of the first 1,000 people in Romania to get the virus. It was a very surreal situation because it was that virus that you see on the TV or on the news on the internet. You see it in China, very very far away, and then you find out that it was in the house that you grew up in and that you lived in, and that your parents might have it, and then it actually turns out that they do have it and they have to go to hospital. Luckily, both of them were fine. In the end, no major symptoms on either of them, but again, a very very strange situation. It was actually the experience itself it was somehow intertwined with travel because I was supposed to travel. So I still remember the day or the evening. Um, I was supposed to go to Mauritius on the afternoon of March 10th. And it was March 9th. And somehow, usually I get very excited before I travel, but somehow
Mm-hmm.
I was getting the feeling that I won't be traveling. I don't know why, but I was getting this feeling, maybe because I was, seeing on TV the situation in Italy and the situation in Europe getting worse and worse. But I was getting a feeling that it's not going to happen. So anyway, come March 9th comes around, a day before I had been at my parents' house. For us, March 8th is Women's Day. in Romania, I think in Europe as well. So I was at my parents' house. I gave flowers to my mom. We had lunch. We of course sat very closely to each other. We kissed goodbye and so on. So very close family lunch. And then comes March 9th, and in the evening I take my pets to my parents' house. I have a couple of pets, and I was taking
Hmm.
them to my parents' house so that they can take care of them while I was away. And I speak to my mom on WhatsApp. She tells me, come over, bring them to me. I get into an Uber, and when I arrive, my mother greets me at the door with a mask on, with a very frightened face. And I was like,
Uh-oh.
okay, what happened? What's up? And she's like, your father is stuck at his hospital. He just found out that he got into in contact with a COVID patient, a very famous case in Romania that I won't get into. A guy that basically kind of, from him, it's not exactly clear how things happen, but he kind of infected a large majority of the doctors and nurses and the medical staff in my dad's hospital. So my mom was saying, your father's not coming home. He needs to get tested, and I don't think you should be going anywhere because you were in contact with me. You were in contact with him yesterday, so it's not safe for you to travel. And then came again a very surreal situation when my mother was saying, you shouldn't be going anywhere, you should be staying home. I was on the phone with my dad. He was saying, go, I don't think I have anything, you just go, travel, have fun. And so I was getting very conflicting messages from both of them. But then I took a decision, and I said, no, I'm not going anywhere. I don't know what will happen. I don't want my parents to get sick. I don't want me to be sick and to pass the virus in Mauritius to anyone there. So I'm going to stay home. So I grabbed my pets and I self-isolated. My parents did the same. My dad initially tested negative, so there were a little bit of feelings of, maybe I should have gone because he didn't have the virus. Maybe I should have
Yeah,
just flew
yeah.
to Mauritius and enjoyed my holiday. But then when he got retested 12 days later, he was positive and my mom was positive. I didn't get tested, so I don't know. I didn't have any symptoms. However, I did self-isolate for a couple of weeks. But yeah, very, very stressful situation,
Yeah, I remember. I think we were staying in touch through WhatsApp as you were going through this ordeal, and I remember. I mean, it was very nice of you to. I think you sent about 100 text messages on the type of precautions that we should take. I mean, we were
Right.
still coming to terms with, just the scale of how this virus is had impacted our lives. And obviously, I work in aviation, so when airlines start behaving the way they do, it's an indication that things are not going very well. But then I had a first-person account of how things were shaping up after having a fairly detailed chat with you, and I think it did help that both your parents were doctors.
Yeah, regardless of your medical background, I think it's still an extremely stressful and weird situation to be in. Yeah.
I think when we met in 2017, it was shortly after I met you that I went to China. It was my first visit to China, 2017.
Mhm.
I spent a few days in Shanghai, and then I went up to Jinan. I would never have thought back then that China would, essentially do what it did to the world. But we had a major standoff with China at one of
I
our
saw that.
northern borders, and Taiwan back then was one of our allies in turn. And when I saw that, I think the first thing that came to my mind was when you sent me a text message saying that you were visiting Taiwan for, I don't know, was it a week or 10 days? And I was like, what's he going to Taiwan for? I mean, I know you'd spent a week in Japan, and then I knew that I think we were planning to go to Istanbul. That never happened. But when you said Taiwan, I was wondering, Taiwan, seriously?
Yeah, absolutely. So before I actually go and tell you about my experience in Taiwan, I just want to take a step back and explain a little bit the why of how I got to Taiwan in the first place. So I'm a big animal lover. It's not just I love animals. I'm a big supporter of animal charities and in particular animal welfare. In general. So that said, now I'm going to make a disclaimer, and I'm going to say I'm aware that no country in the world is good at treating animals. I think every country has things to improve. There's definitely no white or black in the world. That said, there are countries that are, let's say, lighter gray, and countries that are very dark gray towards black. And I hope no one will get offended, but I think it's pretty clear that China is one of those very dark gray towards black countries when it comes to
Yeah,
animal
absolutely.
in short. I've been monitoring the situation. I've been reading news for a very long time about the situation in China with farm animals, with wet markets, with I think they're the only country in the world that make it mandatory for cosmetics to be tested on animals, and that's why a lot of cosmetic companies throughout the world still test, because they want to still be able to sell their products in China, with the situation on fur farms. And I think, a little bit of that, or a lot of that, is now biting us back, now with the situation with COVID, starting from the wet markets and now being amplified by fur farms. You've seen the news from Denmark and everything that's happened. So
Oh yeah, yeah, absolutely.
while I realize that there's no black and white, and all countries, including Romania, have a lot to improve in the area of animal welfare, I knew that China was not going to be, I wouldn't feel comfortable to go there. Based on my beliefs and my concerns, I just wouldn't be comfortable in going there and being a tourist in China. However, I still feel very, very, attracted by their culture, basically. So I said, I want to experience China. I want to experience their culture, but by not going to actual China. So I started doing some research, and I read about Taiwan. And I chose Taiwan as my next travel destination. I went there basically in October of last year. And a lot of people were asking me the exact same thing, why Taiwan? What are you going to see there? What are you going to do there? So I even started getting doubts myself, okay, a lot of people are questioning me on why am I going there? So is it going to be what I imagined it to be? And the answer is yes and more, basically. So I spent, I think it was more than a week, eight or 9 days, I believe it was in Taiwan, if I'm not mistaken. Most of the time I spent in the capital. However, I wanted to make sure that I went out and I visited, more in the surrounding areas. So I stayed in Taipei. I was fascinated by that city, by how nature and the urban lifestyle come together, basically. So I was fascinated just going a little bit outside of Taipei and looking at the city and seeing all of the skyscrapers and jungle among them. So you see a hill or a mountain full of subtropical jungle, and then you see a high rise, or you see Taipei 101, which is an amazing building, amazing of architecture, I would say. So I had an amazing time there, but then I said I want to see more than just Taipei. So I went down south. I went to Kenting National Park, which is in the southern tip of Taiwan. I saw the tropical beaches there. I went in the tropical monsoon rainforest, and I saw some really nice, animals and butterflies and all sorts of exotic plants. When I'm usually traveling, I want to make sure I see things that I don't see back home. So I want to see vegetation that I don't see here in Romania or in Europe. I want to see fauna, like animals, that I cannot find here. So I had an amazing time down south. I then went to Kaohsiung, which is I think the third largest city, or something like that, in Taiwan. Still in the south, still in the tropical area of Taiwan, so below the Tropic of Cancer. And again, had an amazing time there. Visited the city. I really liked the experience of Buddhist temples. And in particular, there was a Buddha museum in Kaohsiung called Fo Guangshan Monastery and Buddha Museum, which actually told a really nice story about the history of Buddhism. It had a relic, I think one tooth of the Buddha was there in that museum, and was a really nice experience, especially for me. I'm a vegetarian. I actually try to eat as much plant-based as possible, but I call myself a vegetarian. Amazing place to be. In that particular museum, everything was vegetarian. All the food was something that I could eat. And even in Taiwan, I really appreciated the fact that I didn't spend time in like McDonald's or Burger King or anything like that, eating French fries and onion rings. I actually went to street food vendors. I was looking for the sign. The Buddhists have a specific sign that mark vegetarian food. So I was just looking for that sign, and I was going in and I was using my chopsticks and eating together with the locals, vegetarian and vegan food, plant-based food, and it was an amazing experience. It was fantastic. It's a very spiritual place. Their temples, their cuisine again is extremely rich, and it shows how much you can do with just plants. You don't necessarily need meat or eggs or milk or anything like that if you don't want to. And the people are just amazing. Even people who didn't really speak English very well, if you stop them on the street, to ask for directions. They would be patient. They would try to communicate in any matter, with very little English, with sign language, with anything, so that they can help you and guide you. So I liked everything about Taiwan: the people, the cities, the nature, the food. It was amazing. I would recommend it to literally everyone. Yeah.
I think given what's transpired over the last 7 months, there can't be a better pitch for the Taiwanese tourism department than just the one that you gave right now. I mean, it takes a
Yeah.
lot. I know, like me, you've traveled a lot around the world, and I mean, just listening to you. Obviously, I've seen your pictures, but let's assume that I was listening to you for the first time. It's still a fairly compelling pitch for anyone to want to visit Taiwan. I think on that
That's what
note,
I was going for.
yeah, I had a very similar experience when I went to Bosnia. I spent time in Croatia, and I spent time in Bosnia. And funnily, I spent more time in Bosnia than I did in Croatia. I have a passion for history, and with everything that happened there during the Balkan Wars, and their history goes back. I think even during the Ottoman rule, there's a lot of Ottoman influence in Bosnia. I spent some time in Mostar. I spent some time in Trebinje, which is sort of quite close to the Croatian border. And I was met with the same set of questions. People, because I actually flew into Dubrovnik and then I crossed the border into Bosnia, and people were asking me, I mean, what are you going to Bosnia for? And I said, there's just so much history there, and both of us like places where there are not a lot of tourists. They're travelers or seeking peace, tranquility. They want to understand cultures. They want to understand people. So I can relate to that, especially given the nature of experience that I had in Bosnia, which brings me to another destination that both you and I have a tremendous amount of liking for, Iceland. I loved Iceland so much that ever since I went to Iceland for the first time in 2013, and I've been back there every year since. I took my parents there for a vacation last year. We went around the country with a great time. It was my 10th time to Iceland, but then I think you had gone to Iceland. I think you'd wanted to see the Northern Lights, so you'd planned your trip in such a way that you were able to see the country and also spot
That's
the
right.
Northern Lights. So I love talking about the country, but I'm equally interested in hearing your views on Iceland.
Yeah. So again, Iceland for me was a fairy tale trip, I would say. It was a place where I felt safe. So immediately after I landed, and landings in Keflavik Airport are quite turbulent. I think I actually read online that the plane is shaking very bad. There's a lot of wind in the area. So right after I landed, I felt extremely safe from the moment I think I took my first breath outside of the airplane. So somehow I knew, again, I had a bit of a feeling that it would be a really nice trip. So I completely enjoyed my stay there. I didn't spend too much time. So again, it was probably like 8 days in total that I spent in Iceland. I remember so yeah, I had multiple things that I wanted to see. I was definitely looking forward to seeing the nature there, and all various things like volcanoes and tar pits, and or mud volcanoes as they call them, and the thermal baths and the glaciers and glacial lagoons and everything there. I wanted to see the northern lights. That was on my list, and I wanted to see puffins, the small birds with the orange
They're
beaks and,
beautiful. They're
and and
lovely.
so
Yeah,
on.
yeah, they are. Yeah, yeah.
They're lovely. Yeah. So somehow, I don't know how it happened, but I managed to check everything off my list. So I remember spending a couple of days in Reykjavik, just taking in the city, a absolutely beautiful city. And then I remember getting a car. Actually, I got the car from the airport just when I arrived. But then I remember traveling by car, doing. So I went along the ring road, basically around the road that circles the
Yeah,
whole island.
yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
I remember stopping in Akureyri, which is the capital of the north in Iceland. And that's where actually I saw the Northern Lights for the first time. I remember, we were just out and then coming back to the hotel. I remember looking up in the sky. The sky was uh, clear, definitely. So that's actually what you need to see the Northern Lights, or to see them properly. You need a clear skies. You need no clouds in the sky, and you need a lack of urban lights. You need to have a dark night sky. So when I saw them first from the city, you could see them, or at least I could see them as, this is exactly how I would describe them: smoke in the sky. It was just like a band of smoke in the sky that had a very pale greenish glow, but like very, very pale. You would have to to look very closely at it to think it's green. It was very smoky. So we said, let's get in a car, let's go outside the city very, very quickly. Luckily, I had no alcohol before getting in the car. A little bit more on that later on. So we got in the car, we went outside the city, and yeah, we could see the lights. It was again very, very dim. It's not as you see them, or at least we didn't see them as you see them in photographs. So it was very, very dim. Again, a very smoky type of milky situation up in the sky, which had a white towards green hue. That was how I would describe it. But again, maybe this was because it was just the beginning of Aurora season. It was just, I think it was September 1st, the day in which I first saw the Northern Lights. So again, amazing experience. But then we started, going around the island. I saw the Arctic Ocean, which was again a very big
Oh
plus
yeah,
on my
yeah,
list.
yeah.
I want to
Absolutely.
be able
Yeah,
to say
yeah.
that I've seen all of the oceans. So the
I did
Arctic
the same. I
Ocean
did
was
the same.
was
Yeah, yeah, yep, yeah.
yeah, put my hand in it. I bragged to the whole world about it. I remember seeing a very nice rock in the Arctic Ocean. It's called Hvitserkur. I'm pretty sure I mispronounced that. It's a kind of an elephant-shaped rock in the Arctic Ocean in the north of Iceland. And then we started going down, and we stayed in the southeastern village of Höfn. Again, it's a fishing village, very close to the Vatnajökull
Yeah, beautiful place.
volcano
Yeah, yeah.
and glacier. And then we went again along the ring road. We saw the glacial lagoon. I can't remember the name right now, but it's the big, very well-known lagoon that's full of floating icebergs and glaciers, and it has seals that are, freely swimming in it. An amazing place. It's extremely beautiful. And then we stopped in Vik. And in Vik, of course, we saw the Reynisfjara, I think it's called, the black sand beach, the
It's a
famous
black sand
black
beach.
sand
Yeah,
beach
yeah, yeah.
of
Mm-hmm.
Iceland, with the black basalt columns that are in the sea. And I think they say that they are trolls that were caught by the morning light and they became petrified, and that's how they
Yeah,
actually
yeah,
became
yeah. So
those
exactly.
basalt
Yeah, yeah.
columns in the sea.
They have some very
A
interesting tales
nice
down there.
legend.
So
Exactly. But then the second time I saw the aurora was actually in Vik, and it was a it was a very funny story because it was very cloudy. It was evening. I think the sun was setting. It was very, very cloudy. So we said, no, there's no chance that we're going to see the aurora today. So what do? It was really cold. Time was passing very, very slowly. So we said, okay, let's start drinking. Let's have a beer. Let's have 2 beers. So we started drinking. We didn't get drunk, just to be very, very clear. I don't typically get drunk, but it was enough alcohol to definitely, I mean, even one bottle, I think, is enough alcohol to not go behind the wheel and drive.
yeah,
Even a
yeah.
drop, I
Very,
think it's
very, very, very
a good
responsible of you,
enough
Mihai.
reason.
Yeah, yeah.
Exactly. So we had some drinks and we were just about to go to bed, but then there's a clearing in the sky and the aurora appears. It was extremely bright, but there's a big let's say surprise here for me was that it was white. So it was extremely bright, like this is what I would call it, but it was white as snow. So not green at all. However, when you took the camera and you took a picture of it, it was glowing green. So it was extremely strange. And I remember, asking other people, how do you see it? Do you see it white or do you see it green? And they were like, no, I mean, with the naked eye, it's white, but when you take a photo of it, it's green. So what did we do? The aurora was kind of hiding. You could just see part of it. It was hiding behind a mountain. And I think the beers were kicking into my system, and we thought, let's go by foot and let's see if we can go see behind the mountain. And we started down the ring road. This hotel that we were staying at in Vik, it was isolated, so it was not in the city, it was on the ring road. So we started just walking on a dark on the ring road, in the dark, complete darkness, just the aurora, and I think there was maybe some moonlight behind us. And we were walking and just hoping that the mountain seemed close to us, but it was actually very far away. And we started walking and taking pictures, hoping that we could get around the mountain and see it better. Of course we didn't. I think the mountain was probably 5 or 6 kilometers away from us, so we didn't manage. The aurora disappeared before we got that far, but at least we got some really cool shots of it. I think,
I think you were
yeah.
quick to tell me the very same thing, that it looked green when you took the photo, and not so much. And in fact, I had a very similar experience when I was up north in Akureyri during the month of December. This must have been 2014. I don't remember, but very similar. I mean, it came out better in a camera's long exposure than it did to a naked eye. But I think in 2016, must have been during the month of October. I thought so they have the Aurora scale, right, on a scale from 1 to 9. So I got very lucky that day because I was staying I think it was near a lake just outskirts of Reykjavik, and we got really lucky. I think the forecast was 8 on a scale of 9, and that's when I got some of my best pictures. And then I think after a couple of minutes, I just threw my camera away. So I'm just going to live this moment, forget taking pictures or not. I've got enough
Right.
of pictures. Unfortunately, I mean, my mom wants to see it, but we actually did Iceland during the summer last year, and we were hoping to. I think she wanted to go to Norway, and which brings me to my next question, because when you went to Tromsø, I was very sure that you were going to get some amazing photos of the aurora.
Actually, yeah. That's a really good question, and the strange thing is that I did get some really good photos of the aurora, but they weren't my photos. It was the photos of the tour guide, and I'm gonna explain that a little bit later on.
Okay. Yeah, sure.
So yeah, what happened is, we did some research on Tromsø, and we said, it's best to go in March. It's best to go in March or early April, because the nights are still there, so you still have the complete darkness that you need in order to see the aurora. But these are the driest months of the year in that area. So yeah, we said, let's go ahead. Let's go in March. So we went ahead. It was, I think, end of March, beginning of April. We landed in a thunderstorm. I never knew that snowstorms can have thunder. I never knew that. I found out in my first day in Tromsø, when it was snowing heavily, and there was thunder and lightning with the snow. So that was a complete surprise to me. In short, we had very wet weather, so there was a lot of snow. Actually, I remember when leaving, there was a red code for avalanches in the whole Tromsø area. However, that didn't stop us, so we rented a car. I'm familiar, with driving on snow and ice, so we drove around. We went to Finland one day. We went to a town in the northern part of Lapland in Finland, and it was, again, an amazing experience with the tundra and all the snow and the fells. The fells are like a type of mountain that they have in the northern part of
Yeah.
Scandinavia, and in Finland in particular. So we drove to Finland. At another point in time, we drove to a place called the Polar Park, where it was basically an animal sanctuary with all sorts of Nordic animals. And then we said, we need to see the aurora. So what do we do? And we went on to an aurora hunting tour. So we basically went into a minibus organized by the hotel. And we went to the border of Finland. It was very, late at night. It was around about 12 a.m. And
So
I
how far
remember
was it
we
from
camped
Tromsø?
2 hours or 2 hours and a half, I think we drove from Tromsø. They said it's the best place, or it's the place where we have the best chance of seeing it. So they didn't guarantee, no tour can guarantee that you see it, but it was the place that might see some clearing in the sky for you to be able to see the aurora. So we went there, and that was the frustrating bit. The tour guide had a very cool camera, a very nice camera. So she put it on. She turned it on, and she pointed it towards a place in the sky where, actually, through all the snow that was going on that night, there was indeed a clearing in the sky. And the weirdest part was when, she said, you look, the aurora is visible. On the camera, it was visible, and I have the pictures to prove it. So I have the pictures from that night, and you could definitely see the green glow on the sky. However, when you looked with the naked eye, it was absolutely nothing. So you couldn't see a thing. It was just a clearing in the sky, and maybe, again, something whitish in the horizon, but it was very, very clearly visible on the camera. So then, again, the sky went dark again with clouds and more snow. So we were freezing to death. So the tour guide said, okay, I don't think we're going to see any more aurora tonight, so we need to head back to Tromsø. So we drove again another 2 hours and a half, and we came back to the city. And then on the last day, I remember we were there, and there was actually an Indian family staying at our hotel, and they
Yeah, we're there everywhere.
yeah, and they were with us on the first tour, and they greeted me at breakfast, and they said, "Ah, okay, you're the guy from the first Aurora hunting trip." And I was like, "Yeah, I guess I saw you as well." And they said, we were on tour again last night. We paid again for the tour, and we saw the aurora, and it was magnificent. And I was like, smiling, and I'm so happy for you. I'm so happy that you saw it. But in the
Yeah, but you didn't
interior,
mean that, did
I was
you?
burning up. I was so angry that I didn't get the chance to see it. So we said, let's give it one more try. We're not gonna pay any more money for this tour. Let's get into our rental car, and let's go up the mountain. So Tromsø is very close to the ocean, but let's go up the mountain to a place that we have actually visited one day before. It was a place at the ocean, a very nice beach called Grotfjord. I think it stands for Great Fjord. And we saw that place in the day, and we said, let's go and see it at night as well. The problem is that we had a red code for avalanche in the area, so we said, let's go to the base of the mountain. There was a town at the base of the mountain, and we said, if we see cars coming and going, so if you see other locals coming and going, let's go as well, and let's drive up the road and see if we catch the aurora. If not, let's not risk it. So we went to the base, we saw cars coming and going, we said, let's go ahead. We went up the mountain, we parked our car, and again, we waited for, I think, 2 hours with snacks and chips and juice and everything. We
Hot
did
chocolate, yeah.
basically yeah, all sorts of junk food. But then, you know what? The aurora actually appeared very clearly, very visible. Again, white. I've never seen a green aurora. Maybe again a very small green hue. It was a white band in the sky and white bands that were slowly moving. The frustrating part of it, my smartphone and no other smartphone did the trick. So we were capturing the sky, you could only see the stars. So you couldn't actually see the aurora. And that was, again, the frustrating bit. So I have pictures of an aurora that I didn't see, and then I don't have any pictures of an aurora that I actually saw with my own eyes. It was a very strange situation.
Yeah, I
But
know
yeah, I
it's
enjoyed the trip anyway.
yeah, it's important to have the right gear. I mean, when I
Yeah.
saw the aurora, I think I've tried seeing it 10 times. I got lucky on three
Hmm.
occasions, and on all three occasions, I think the first two occasions I never really had a professional camera with me. The third time it was more an amateur camera, but fortunately it had the ability to expose up to 30 seconds, which is what you need to get the aurora. But now I'm equipped with a much better camera sort of now, but I haven't been up to the north during the winter months yet. Sort of hoping to do it this year, but it looks highly unlikely given what's transpired. But Mihai, I think the thing about places like Tromso and even Iceland, one of the very famous sayings there is, if you don't like the weather, just wait for 5 minutes. That's the frequency at which the weather sort of changes.
Right.
And Tromso, despite its latitude, the weather is still moderate compared to the rest of Norway, isn't it?
I would say so. I mean, that's at least what the people were saying, that we have it better. Somehow we caught a very wet March with a lot of snow, but they were saying it's not usually like that. It's much more moderate on our side. So I think we were somehow unlucky, but at the same time lucky, because we got to experience some more severe weather. And it was, again, a very weird experience for me just driving through that weather. But again, I got the courage just from seeing the other locals do it. So I said, okay, if everyone's driving and acting like nothing's wrong, I said, let me do the same. But yeah, no, I agree with you. I think it's much more moderate because of the ocean. This is what the locals were saying.
Yeah. Which brings me to another
Yeah.
question, right? I mean, you spoke about driving through Norway. I mean, my memories of Norway are very expensive. I spent some time in Stavanger, which is sort of closer to Oslo, down uh, in the south of Norway. I was there on a business trip, but then Stavanger is the oil capital of Norway. But when I started thinking about budget trips in Europe, I did Eastern Europe, of course. I visited you in Romania. I did Croatia. I did Bosnia. I spent a bit of time in Hungary. I spent a bit of time in Poland, Lithuania. Great countries, but I've never driven through these countries, and I know you did that. So, is it safe? Is it expensive? And if I was an Asian coming into that region, you know where I'm coming from.
So Is it safe? I would say mostly yes, just to start off with that. I say mostly because I think there are exceptions, and I'm gonna touch upon that in a minute. Um, is it safe for people from Asia, people who don't look the same way as people in the
Yeah,
Balkans
yeah.
do?
Hmm.
I couldn't say that, or I couldn't state out loud for each and every country that I visited. I know for Romania at least, I could say that the parts in Romania that I've seen, I think that it would be perfectly safe, and I think that
Oh
would
yeah.
probably be the same for countries like, definitely for Croatia, definitely for Bosnia, definitely for Macedonia and Bulgaria. I'm not definitely for Greece as well. I'm not sure about other, smaller countries. So, for example, Albania, I wouldn't be too sure. I didn't spend too much time there. I have just one opinion of that country that I'm gonna. It's about driving. It's regarding driving that really drove me crazy. But no, I think it would probably be safe for anyone, regardless of how they look at it and where they come from. Um, Now, that said, um, yeah, so I did do multiple trips. The last one that I have in my mind would be the one that I did last year. So I went through Bulgaria. I didn't stay in Bulgaria. I went directly to Macedonia, which is a wonderful, wonderful country. It's a very small country. I think it has like 2 million inhabitants, so roughly the size of Bucharest.
Oh
The
yeah,
whole
yeah.
country is roughly
It's.
the size of the capital
Were
of
you in
Romania.
Skopje or were you in
I was in
Skopje?
Skopje.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
was in
I,
Skopje.
I, I
That
went
was
to
the
a different
capital.
part of. Yeah, I think now it's called. Is it called Northern Macedonia now? I
North
think they've changed the
Macedonia.
name. Yeah,
North
yeah, yeah.
Macedonia. Exactly. It's called
I
North
went there and
Macedonia.
I bought a statue of Alexander the Great. So I mean, for history buffs, that's where
Right.
Alexander the
Yeah.
Great was from. Yeah, yeah.
Well, don't tell the Greeks about that because they wouldn't be happy to hear
I
that.
know, I
That's
know.
a whole
I was
conflict that
there.
actually resulted
I was there on
in the
both.
name
Exactly.
change. Yeah.
I was there on both sides of the border, so I know that story quite well. But yeah, go
Yeah.
on.
Yeah. Yeah. But no, I mean, again, it's an amazing country, and Skopje, I think, it's a nice city. It's um, a- a capital city with all sorts of people and all sorts of architectures. I think the cities that I enjoyed most, or the places that I enjoyed most, would probably be the Ohrid Lake and all of the surrounding little small towns and hamlets and villages, because it's a very traditional place. The nature is very beautiful. It's basically a large lake surrounded by mountains. And that lake actually borders Albania and Macedonia. So it has the border between it consists of the border between the two countries. But then, so again, that area is absolutely wonderful. I really liked Kruševo. It's a town, it's a very important town for their history. It has a lot of historic buildings, a lot of history behind it. It's actually the town where it was the first uprising against the Ottoman Empire in the whole Balkans region. So some people there in Kruševo actually decided to rise up and started a revolution and declared themselves a republic, which was crushed after 10 days, but it gave a very nice message that people were no longer accepting the status quo that the Ottoman Empire was putting in or was directing in Europe at the time. So again, Kruševo is a really nice place. Ohrid is a really nice place. And again, it's full of nature and mountains and valleys and rivers. So I would definitely recommend a trip to North Macedonia. And then we went to Montenegro. In order to get to Montenegro, we had to drive through Albania. Got to Montenegro, again, a very, very beautiful place. A place where, again, mountains meet sea, but like, roughly meet sea. I mean, you have like a very tall mountain ending right in the sea.
Oh yeah, I
So
think it was the
it's an
Bay
amazing
of
scenery and
Kotor, wasn't
amazing.
it? I was supposed to go there. I decided against it. Was it the Bay of Kotor? Am I pronouncing it right?
That's what exactly. So we stayed close to Budva, but then we visited the Bay of Kotor as well. We actually put our car on a ferry and we crossed the Bay of Kotor via ferry, and then we went further to Croatia, to Dubrovnik, which is again an amazing place, um, crowded
I
with
would
tourists
disagree,
and very
but
very
yeah,
hot.
it
I
was
mean,
full of
yeah,
people.
again, it's very very
I hated
crowded.
Dubrovnik. I
It's full of
absolutely hated Dubrovnik. Yeah, yeah. And
yeah.
as someone who's never watched a single episode of Game of Thrones, I found it extremely difficult to understand the type of conversations that were happening there.
Right, right. No, I mean, again, I think Dubrovnik is a victim of its fame and of its success. Yeah, I mean, again, it's an amazing place. I love again the history behind it, the architecture, the whole feeling of the city, but it's extremely crowded. So yeah, I would say, Croatia was extremely beautiful, and the southern side that we visited, Montenegro was again an amazing place full of wild nature and beauty. Wherever you'd look on the road, we had to stop. Like, I mean, I think every 10 minutes we needed to stop the car to take another picture because there was an angle that made the sea look very beautiful with the light and
Oh
the
yeah,
sun
it
glistening on
certainly is.
on the
Yeah,
sea
yeah.
surface. And there's a lake there, a very large lake. I think it's called Skadar Lake. It's somewhere between Albania and, I might be confusing it, but I think it's somewhere between Albania and Montenegro. Again, a very beautiful place. So I highly recommend the whole area of Montenegro and Croatia. It's wonderful.
Given that we're going to be coming out of the pandemic and everybody's going to be looking at, well, where do we head next? Western Europe's been fairly saturated as a tourist destination for most Indians. I'll speak on behalf of my fellow countrymen. You've got, ample number of, tourist packages that take you there. Eastern Europe, I'm aware of a few that exist, but what I would encourage people to do is when I went there, I just took a car and drove around. And if you're comfortable doing that, it's extremely cheap. Places are accessible. If you want to refuel in some of the non-EU countries, because once you come into Croatia, things are significantly more expensive. So I remember refueling in Bosnia, buying supplies in Bosnia, having a Coke in Bosnia, and then crossing the border and deciding not to do anything. Uh, which
Yeah.
brings me to your home country, Mihai. I think when people wake up after this pandemic ends, there is an infatuation with destinations that have not been tapped to its fullest potential. And having visited you in Romania twice, I think it's important that we as Indians and anybody who's watching this deserve a chance to get to know Romania as a country better. So if you were to give me a 2 or 3 minute pitch on why we should visit Romania, um,
I definitely start to see. I've definitely started to see Romania as a tourism destination for a while now. I mean, I've always loved it because it's my home country, but I'm actually seeing the tourists now. So I was, really surprised before the pandemic to see Bucharest full of, or the old part of Bucharest, the old city as we call it, full of non-Romanian speaking people, and
Is
that
that
was
where
a
you
bit
took
of a
me?
surprise for me
Was this the
because
Revolution Square and other places that you took me to?
that's exactly right. So it's the Revolution
Okay,
Square, and
okay.
then it's the area where we had polenta, I think, in the Manuk Inn and so on.
That was a lovely
Uh,
that was a lovely restaurant. Yeah, that was.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. No, I mean, and again, it's I would say this. So I don't have, even though I don't have a, let's say, a pitch prepared in my mind, what I would do if I would be a tourist in Romania, I would stop in Bucharest for at least a couple of nights. I would try to, to see as much as possible from the city because it's a again, it's a capital city full of people. Uh, it has a very eclectic type of architecture. So you see, older buildings in French style, then close to North Korean type of blocks. They really are. They actually Ceausescu built them on following the North Korean model
Sort
of
of the
blocks,
communist influence,
residential
isn't it? Yeah,
buildings.
yeah.
The communist influence, exactly. But then I would have a look at this architecture, even if it's a mix. Some people might find it ugly and repulsive, some people might actually find it beautiful, but I think it's definitely worth seeing. And then there's definitely things to visit, like the Palace of the Parliament, to see that big building, the second largest building in the world in terms of
That was quite a tour.
surface.
That was quite a tour
uh,
that you and I had. Yeah.
Remember, right, exactly. And again, it's there are things to see, but then I wouldn't just stay in Bucharest. I would definitely go outside. I think Romania is a very spiritual place. So we believe, for us, we're Orthodox Christians. We have a lot of spirituality in the country. So I think I would definitely go out towards Transylvania and towards northern Romania, and I would have a look at how, let's say, faith and nature become intertwined, because Transylvania is, I think, the most beautiful region of Romania. And then I would really recommend that people go and see the fortified churches of Transylvania, that they can go a little bit upwards and see the wooden churches of Maramuresh and the whole nature that surrounds that area. I would then maybe take a step into Moldova and see the painted monasteries of Moldova. It's again extremely impressive. And again, it's not just seeing the churches; it's seeing the monks that live there, seeing the villages, the hamlets of Moldova, the hamlets of Transylvania. Um, the way of life that hasn't changed for those people since a very very long time, and they're still authentic, and they're still very hospitable, and they're happy to receive guests and to cook a meal for you, or things like that. So I would definitely step outside of Bucharest. I wouldn't make the mistake of just seeing Bucharest and deciding that
Yeah,
I've
yeah.
seen Romania. um, and then I would probably do something that I'm ashamed that I myself haven't done. I would go and see the Danube Delta. I've had many people, from the company that I work with. I work in a multinational company, and I've had people actually coming here and then going and seeing the Danube Delta. I'm 32 years old. I haven't yet seen it, so I need to do it. I absolutely need
It's
to
like
go
me
there.
having not seen
Um,
the Taj Mahal yet.
how could you? I mean, yeah,
I
that's
have not.
I
I've
know
not.
what you
Yeah.
mean exactly. Yeah, same here, same here. And then probably, I mean, if you love the sea, I would probably spend some time on the Black Sea coast as well. Although, to be fully honest with you, I would be very very careful on the prices there, because the hotels there tend to be very very pricey, with not much of substance added to that price, basically. So I would, to be honest, for a sea loving person, I would probably go to near Bulgaria. I would go south. I would cross the border to Bulgaria, and I would prefer to go there. I think there are much better conditions to stay. Transylvania, Moldova, Bukovina, and Maramuresh and Bucharest are worth a visit for sure.
I think when you were speaking about the monasteries, I was reminded of my trips to Georgia and Armenia. I did Georgia in 2017. I did Armenia around about the same time last year. So you walk up to those monasteries, you have those little villages and hamlets. I mean, it's a surreal experience. And perhaps um, when I visit you next, but I must admit that perhaps I'm going to wait for you to return the favor by visiting me in India before I make another trip to Romania. But how,
It's
I
on the
mean,
list.
you work, I mean, I know you work with Oracle. Obviously, you've got a lot of Indian colleagues. So what is it that you've heard about India, and what excites you the most thinking about India?
So I think there are two things mainly, and it's probably similar to what excited me about Taiwan in the first place: nature and spirituality. So first of all, I've again, I can't say, I don't want to do any cultural appropriation or anything like that, because I want to be very clear in the fact that I haven't done extensive research on the topic, but I love the teachings of compassion and non-violence that Buddhists and Hindus preach. And I've seen this firsthand in Taiwan. I've seen, again, from the temples at the and the people and the food and the vegetarian restaurants and vegan restaurants and everything that was there. So I
You've
think
seen
that
me
would
too,
be the
Mihai.
first. Right. I mean, yeah,
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 I'm
and
vegetarian, vegan,
exactly.
everything you said. That
I know.
non-violence. Yeah.
Exactly. So I think one thing would be, I would definitely come for the temples and the food, and I would, like to understand. That's, I think, one of the key questions that I have in my mind. How come, some religions are so keen in preaching these principles, of compassion and on violence, and some other religions are not? And I would really like to understand what's the difference, and how did it get to this point, I would say, in each and every religion or major religion of the world. So I'd be interested in again, the spirituality of the country, and secondly, I'd be interested in the nature, because again, tropical rainforests and hummingbirds and whatever else you guys have over there in India are not something that I see here. So I see pigeons, and I see oak trees, and I see, things that are specific to a temperate climate. But I don't. I'm very keen on seeing that tropical vegetation and fauna and climate that you guys have over there. So I would take a walk in nature and a visit at a temple anytime in India,
I,
basically.
I look forward to hosting you here, Mihai. So I'm definitely an inevitable optimist. I know eventually things are going to get better. I look forward to being your host here when you visit me. it looks as though it's going to take another 2 or 3 years for the aviation industry to pick up. So there's a pretty good chance that you could give me a shout at short notice, and I'm still going to be available to drive you around the country. And that's something that I am looking forward to doing. So, I mean, it was lovely having a chat with you. I know we've been in touch through WhatsApp. We've had a chat, but then just to see you on video to be able to have this conversation. But hopefully, we'll all get
Exactly.
out of this. I look forward to meeting you in person and continuing some of our adventures together.
Same here. It was really nice talking to you and seeing you again.